Hello and welcome back to the Transfer Flow. And on today's episode, we're taking a look at some potential big transfers for the summer with a young midfielder linked to Manchester City and a possible Van Dijk replacement for Liverpool. But are they any good? Then we're going to look at the midweek action with Chelsea playing Spurs on Thursday night. Why is this an interesting time for these London sides to face off? That's all on today's episode of the Transfer Flow. Well, Ted, that took 2 attempts, that intro, which is what you get for trying to improv it. I got smug, I got extemporaneous, and here we are.
First time in your life, though, so I'm sure that.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Never done it previously. But how have you been? How was your weekend?
It was really good. Yeah, kids this weekend. Weather in the UK is great, which is very unusual. We've got summer weather in spring, which means that it's going to be fucking terrible in the summertime. Guess it's a good time to go travel. And most importantly, transfers are back, baby. Yes.
They are back. Yeah. International break out. Transfers in. That's what we like to see.
Yeah. Best friends with transfers now.
And we've got some transfers we want to talk about today. Okay. So a couple of these you maybe touched upon in the newsletter. So I suggest that people go and check out Monday's newsletter. Also, while I'm here, people should go and check out ManDown, our new non-football venture. Me and Ted talking about all the issues. The first transfer, Hugo Larsson to Manchester City, 50 mil, having a good season, young Swede, he's only 20 years old. What do we think about this? Because Man City obviously threw a bunch of money around in the January window, but we expect that this rebuild is going to take at least 1 to 2 windows more, assuming they get those. What do we think about Hugo Larsson as a kind of starting point for the midfield retool?
I'm not sold on the price. I think they're probably interested in him as a talent. And he's playing in a pretty good league, but it's a league that has like a lot of freedom as well. Like it's a very the good part is it's a transition league. The less good part is like structure is sometimes an afterthought in German football, which is ironic and strange given the engineering prowess of that former world power. Yeah, I don't like the 50 million price attached to this. I feel like he is not doing enough exciting things in the midfield to really make sense at that price. Now, as a talent, like this is, this reminds me of the type of transfer that Southampton would make and then Liverpool would buy after 2 or 3 years in sort of England / the Premier League, right? You want to take a little bit of the risk out of that by seeing him someplace else for a year or two. Or you want to lower that price by like half. And then you want to loan him someplace where he's going to get good minutes and then he can eventually be your starter in a year or two when he's had like a bit more proofing. At that price, like if you're paying 50 million, he either needs to be an attacking superstar. He needs to be effectively João Neves, which, or like, yeah, you've got like a lot of risk attached to it because he's not going to start right now. So that's my take on it. I know that young players have an extreme premium now, mostly because like you're trying to avoid Chelsea buying all of them. But I don't think that this quite makes sense for City in particular. They're looking for players who can rock right now. They can put other players in their sort of multi-club ownership system and then wait for them to develop. And they might, right? They might already have 1 or 2 guys that they're like, look, summertime, we'll bring them across. We'll give them backup minutes and then see how that goes.
Yeah, it felt like Marmoush, right? Was the transfer they made where it was like, please save our season. But then the other transfers they've made have been more with one eye on the future. Like I think they've got more out of Husanov early doors than they maybe expected to. We still don't really expect to see much of Reis, though maybe we will, given the defensive injuries. It feels like you run the risk of ending up with this kind of bifurcated squad where you've got all these young guys who are not quite there yet. You've got a bunch of old guys who are on their way out. And in the meantime, what are Man City meant to be? Are they just going to ask Pep to kind of keep things floating until for the next guy who comes in? Doesn't make sense.
No, I don't think so. They know that Pep has a shelf life and they want to keep him happy. I expect City to spend big on ready-made players in the summertime again. I think when we were talking in the January window, I was convinced that they were going to spend. They did spend, and basically, I'm pretty convinced that they'll spend again in the summertime because like that's the only way that this adds up, right? Like you don't spend in January to try and stabilize stuff, make sure you stay in the Champions League, and then like peter out. And you're not expecting Pep to Hansi Flick the fucking squad. Like that's not what he signed up for. That's not what you got him for. So yeah, I think they'll go big again and get players that are ready right now.
Yeah, so I mean, look, I would like to see Larsson move. Like, and if you knock 15 mil off this and he goes on loan to, Girona or something, then you can see it, like you were kind of saying. But I do feel that with Man City, there are loads of, and actually this is true of a lot of the kind of, the Arteta, Alonso types. You see these players linked and you just look at their passing numbers and you think this immediately doesn't pass the smell test. There's absolutely no way that Pep doesn't carry okay passes. And Larsson's very promising as a passer, but he's nowhere near Pep level yet.
Yeah, and passing is an attribute that increases over time outside of the age curve. So you will have some incredible passers that are very young. They see the game and sort of this awesome multifactorial calculus type thing. A lot of times, like, you need more reps to be able to prove yourself. That sort of 21, 22-year-old. And then when we've done the passing models, like usually sort of 30 is like the maturity. Now there's some selection bias in there, in that the best passers will be, have longer careers, and so you will see like the curve skew a bit. But it is something that we think is more a slightly intellectual, mental, perceptual type skill as opposed to purely physical.
Okay, sure. Well, interesting to see what happens with him in the summer. But as a regular for Manchester City next season, not sure about that.
Nay.
Should we go on to Jonathan David, who has come up a couple of times? We talked about him in the summer. We talked about him in January. Well, now with his contract approaching its end, he's going to be available on a free, and he's been linked to Newcastle, presumably as an Isak backup. Now, obviously, look, it's more nuanced than this, but it's just very funny to say that you and Kim have called him a penalty merchant. But he has had a lot of pens over the last few years. Still, we're looking at, I think it was 21 non-penalty goal involvements in the league last year, 18 the year before. He's at 11 this season. Some output in the Champions League as well that's pretty respectable. This does feel like you're not going to get a superstar, but there's very little bust potential here as well.
Yeah, you kind of know what you're getting. He's happy to press. He's got fewer goals this year, which is a small concern. Like, when somebody trends down pretty aggressively in a contract year, that has some worries. So you want to suss that out and think about it. His agent very clearly did not want him to move last summer. They wanted to get him out of contract so that they could get all of the money and not Lille, the team that had the contract. He's fine for one of those mid-tier teams, effectively. Like, I mean, he might even be a pretty good goal scorer for a place like Man United where they need a goal scorer, but I don't think that Man United are going to go in for him. He's listed as a potential target for 6 teams, but that's like a lot of agent smoke, like a lot. He could go anywhere across the Champions League, and I think people will be fine. I'm not convinced he's coming to the Premier League. I'm convinced that his agent would like to sell him to the Premier League. And obviously the English language thing is fine, but he's done very well in France. And he's seemingly done pretty well in the Champions League. I just think, looking at his current numbers this season, I'm not super excited to pay like a big premium. Like, it might be somebody else on the continent that pays the wage package, and he'll probably do better in a slightly lesser quality league.
Yeah, in January there were some rumors about him as a backup striker for Barcelona, and I thought, this is what you do not want this guy to get into the mindset that like maybe Barcelona is a possibility, because that is a surefire ticket to riding the bench for a long time.
Lewandowski's never retiring.
Lewandowski will be in better shape than Jonathan David in 5 years. I mean, but Jonathan David, he does seem like a smart player, right? Like, we've seen when we look at his Champions League numbers versus his league numbers, he pops as a creator in the Champions League. So that feels like he has the kind of nous to play a different way when teams are keying on him, which is
he used to play more as a 10/second striker in Belgium, in his Belgian time. Yeah, so he's got that. I think he's a little more versatile than he gets credit. He also has a good work rate. So like, I'm not trying to like be super negative about him. In fact, like, I think he's very interesting, and the fact that you don't have to pay a transfer fee is good depending on what the wages look like. Because the way, people are like, oh, he's on a free. I'm like, yeah, he's on a free, but his wages are like 50 million. And if he wasn't, then like there might be 25 billion. So like, there's still some element in there that's expensive. He's not an Isak, I think, is what I'm trying to tell people gently. And we don't even know that Isak's going to move like that. That I think is possibly one of the more interesting tales of the summer. Like, if Newcastle could find a deal for Isak that made sense for them, like say 90 is the right number, like they might be happy to take that and kind of rebuild the structure there, because we know that they were tight under PSR. We know that there's some difficulty in figuring that out. So if they could just basically get themselves out of cap lock and be happy to sell Isak, then that could be a lot of different dominoes that fall. But it's the most important one this summer.
Yeah, I mean the rumors here are kind of like Isak at 150 or something, right? Which is pretty insane. But if they were
who's paying that for a guy that's going to be 27 next year, and also has had some issues occasionally with availability?
Not Liverpool,
no,
who have been linked at that price, which is very funny to me. But if they could turn a big fee for Isak into a right winger, a centre forward, and then add David on a free or something, now you're kind of getting my interest. Actually, that does bring us to our next player, because one striker who looks in quite a thin striker market, one striker who's kind of interesting and looks to be available in the summer is Darwin Nunez. To Atletico Madrid is the rumor we're discussing today, for about 60 mil. If he was going for 60 mil and you just sold Isak, I think that would be a hilarious move that I would love to. I do just want someone to take Darwin Nunez off the chain, because Slot's kind of muzzled him this season, right? Like he's got 1,400 minutes. He's got 9 goal involvements. He's down from something like 0.95, in fact, non-penalty expected goals and assists per 90 last season, to 0.56 this season, which I do not like. I guess the question there is working out, is this more who he is, or is last year more who he is, right? Because in this more conservative
last
style,
year and previous years are more who he is. So
okay.
if you can put him in a place that has like a vibes coach that can allow him to just be the Darwin experience, I think that there's a lot of potential success there. There's like Cavani-esque element about him, right? Like I don't think he's as disciplined as Cavani, but he's got much higher attacking output when he's like unleashed. And Darwin Unleashed is like a pretty interesting proposition. Now the question is like, where can you go that will get that type of money? I don't think Liverpool are getting 60 for him outside of the Premier League. Like absolutely not. I think that that's a tough price to figure out, because like there's just a really big risk quotient about what you're saying, right? So like Slot, has won a title, but he's kind of dampened the enthusiasm people would have in the Darwin market. So there's some sales elements there. I'm pretty sure that Liverpool want to move on from Luis Diaz as well. He's been a constant in the transfer market. It's also partly availability, partly age. Like they will happily turn those two over in the summertime. The big question is Mo, right? And we haven't seen those deals come through yet. We've seen Trent probably disappear, like allegedly been confirmed to be going to Real Madrid this season. So yeah, the big three is now potentially the big two. That's a lot of change if those two go, plus the two forwards we're talking about.
Well, we're coming on to Liverpool in a bit, so I don't want to talk too much about their rebuild there, because it does look like that's going to happen. Somebody pointed out to me that Konate's also got a year on his contract as of this summer. I mean, Darwin, you can see in the numbers that they're not kind of hitting him the way they were last year. Like these receptions, these kind of outlet balls, progressive receptions, are down from like kind of 9 a game to something like 5, and fewer through ball attempts, fewer cross attempts. It just feels like he's not allowed to do
magic. I think that's genuinely tactical, and we see that Slot is playing quite differently. We also know that the last year of Klopp was a lot of vibes and attack. Like they were super high tempo, partly because like they just did not have the defensive integrity to not play that way. Like when you know that you've got an edge in the skill positions, but you also know that your defense is a little loose. Like playing up tempo helps you get more points potentially than you would otherwise. I kind of like the idea of Darwin at a slightly lower price as a replacement for Isak. So like, can you get Darwin for like say 45 and a clause, and then sell Isak for 90 to 100? That's probably kind of cool.
That would be incredibly fun. I also like him for Atleti. I think that would be really fun. I mean, they've got Sorloth, but I think I would love to see Alvarez Nunez in attack for them. It'd be bananas.
Yes, I think the rumor in the newsletter today, and you should definitely sign up for the transferflow.com/subscribe. On the Atleti side was Enzo, who I think Enzo's I think Enzo's agent is definitely intrigued by the idea of getting him out of there. I think he feels like he's not being utilized in the right way at Chelsea. If Caicedo is the only true six, and Caicedo's been great. So like of all the Chelsea players, like Caicedo, Palmer, and Nico Jackson are clearly like the top tier there. Yeah, like then you're like, okay, he needs to be used better somewhere that he can be the player that we saw before he moved. It would be great if he moved. I don't think that I don't think Chelsea are going to be excited about him moving. I know that nobody's going to be excited about paying like a huge fee for him. And so that was why the rumor in the newsletter today was basically a swap deal plus 25 million, which values him somewhere around the 50 to 60 range, which I still think is probably about 10 million too low.
Yeah, I mean, but his book value must still be like 80.
I don't remember how long the contract is. That's the problem. If it's a 5-year book value, then you're looking at 60, right? Anyway, it's Chelsea are so weird. But UEFA had decided that FFP only works for the 5-year period, so you can only amortize across 5, not 2,000.
Oh, but does that apply retroactively, right? Because they got him before that ruling.
I don't care. That's just how I'm doing the math. You guys can be like more specific about that. Go read the accountants if you want to. Jesus Christ, what do you want from me, man?
It's quick maths. Like, I just think as a kind of like modern day cookie, I do kind of love it. You know, I think that would be really fun. Like the idea of having this connection between him and Alvarez, I think is really exciting. I'm really enjoying this. I guess it's funny at the moment because I feel like I'm reading so many hagiographies of Andrea Berta. Oh, he's the guy who rebuilt Atletico Madrid after they won that title in 13-14. It's like, stop talking about that. That was not a good time. This was not a good quote-unquote rebuild that he did. Plus, did he rebuild or was he there while Simeone did what he wanted? That kind of is what it feels like.
When you look at the power in that particular club, it's Simeone and friendly agents, I think, more than anything else.
Yeah. Okay. Well, look, I would love to see Nunez starting for basically anyone next season. If he went to Newcastle, if Newcastle could turn a big profit. Oh boy. Yeah, but they still. I mean, they know they need to move on from Watkins at some point. Well, I don't know if they do know that because if that, I don't really believe that second bid that Arsenal supposedly made for Watkins in January was real. You know, you've said a lot of time that we don't really believe that Arsenal had that money.
I've heard since then that they couldn't decide amongst themselves whether he was going to be approved. It was like, you know, there were 3 parties involved and like everybody kept vetoing each other. So maybe it was true. I don't know. Like if you put Darwin with a competent coach over at, say, Juventus, like he's going to have so much fun in Serie A, like because like they're just so happy to generate shots there. I think you're right though. Like if it were Madrid, but Madrid have to make some moves before that's possible because they got pretty aggressive in this past summer, and so they would need to send some outbounds in order to make that work. I think if you're looking as a fan, we like Darwin, and we're quite intrigued by Darwin anywhere that's not there that allows him to be a little more of the chaos element that he brings to football, which I think is a net positive.
Yeah, that's the one thing, right? Like, if you're going to sign him, then you need to do it on the understanding that to get the best out of him, you've got to let Darwin be Darwin. You know, because I remember last summer there was that we were talking about him to Arsenal as a really fun option. And you're like, if he went to Arsenal and Arteta was like, our attack needs an element of chaos and you're going to be it, then that's great. But if he went to Arsenal and Arteta said, now we're going to turn you into the world's most boring player, sucks. Don't do it. Okay. Next up. Bellingham to Brighton for 30 mil. How could it be true? Oh, it's Jobe Bellingham.
Jobe Bellingham. Jobe Bryant. Exactly.
Jobe Bryant. Yeah, exactly. 6'3", 19 years old. He reminds me of this other guy I'm thinking of, has played 3,000 league minutes for Sunderland in the Championship. He's actually the most used under 21 outfielder in the Championship this season by quite some distance. And he's playing a slightly different role as well. You know, a little bit less attacking than it was in the past. More involvement in build-up, fewer touches in the box, kind of orchestrating. Interesting.
Some of that is like a question of like, you know, what are we getting off of Regi, who is his head coach? Yeah, it is different. And previous seasons make you more comfortable and excited about his output. He's versatile. Obviously, as a specimen, like this is not in question, right? Like, you know that the Bellingham brothers are perfectly capable of putting in a lot of time at a very young age. 30 million is an easy number, I think, for Brighton to justify. Like, not that they need him, though. I think Brighton are actually too deep, right? Like, please, someone come pay very good prices for anybody that we think is slightly surplus goods. But you can't have Danny Welbeck. That's the important bit. So, yes, I think this price makes sense for anybody in the league to pick up. I think that he is versatile enough that you're very happy to put him in your midfield for the next decade at an average Premier League level. The question is, can he become something more akin to what his brother is, or someone that is a starter for the Champions League? Now, the early period of time that he's been playing says that, yeah, probably, but he's not the finished product. And so if you put him again into a team, much like we were talking about with Larsson earlier, that you're expecting him to immediately perform at a very high level with a lot of demands on reading the game and a lot of demands on what he does across both transition and out of possession. I'm not convinced, but that would be a stupid thing to think about a 19-year-old anyway, right? So like,
sure.
Well, he'll be 20 in September, but yeah, the price is easy to justify at the age. Everybody loves this type of thing. Like Sunderland would be kind of crazy. I mean, they'd be very frustrated to let him go, but also it's probably time.
Sure. And they've got so many assets there. I mean, like there are rooms around him, there are rooms around Rig, the two players who have a combined age, roughly the same as me.
I think Rig's probably more exciting sooner.
Okay.
He's really interesting to watch. I like him a lot. And then obviously they got Le Fille, who hasn't been entirely healthy, but looks like he's pretty good. That's a big clause on that one from Roma. But if they don't get promoted, then I think that he could potentially go back, or there's a lesser clause around it.
He'd be a really interesting player, I think, for a few Premier League clubs to be looking at if there's a good deal to be had there. I mean, Jobe is not popping as a ball carrier quite to the degree that his brother did, obviously. And I guess it's frustrating that that's the irresistible comparison that will be made to one of the most exciting young central midfielders we've seen in the last decade.
I think that he would have fun in a league that was less tough than England is right now. Like Championship's a very tough league, tons and tons and tons of games. If you put him over in Germany, it's going to be interesting for him. Like possibly even, I think he would learn a lot in Italy. They expect more tactical discipline than he potentially has had previously. I think his current head coach probably pushes some of that as well. And like let him have fun for a year or two and then bring him back across. That might be interesting. But yeah, that's partly an agent play. Like who's guiding him? Do they want him to have the same career path as his brother? That's useful. Or does somebody just want to stump in and say, hey, we're going to take a chance on his potential and bring him right now, and then our coaches will coach him up to be something great.
Yeah, we've seen him linked to Dortmund as well, so it would be kind of fun if they went back to the Bellingham well. But
everybody knows of it, right? Like this is such an easy link. It causes
but it does also make sense though. Like it is a Dortmundy thing to do. But I wouldn't be surprised if somebody just takes a big gamble on genetic superiority here and thinks, right, okay, he's going to come to the Premier League and we're going to have him at Palace or something. But I imagine he will want to aim a little bit.
I feel like this is next door to genepotism, but not the exact same case. Like this is like fraternal genepotism, which I'm not sure. Like it's like how many Turams are there and how many of them are elite players?
Good question. Well, actually, we're moving on to somebody else who is kind of in the same category, right? We're talking Nico Schlotterbeck to Liverpool. Rumor about 60 mil. Now, okay, with Liverpool, because they're obviously going to win the league and they've been great this season, a lot of the conversation about the makeup of the squad has just been limited to those three players who need new contracts. But there are so many areas to be worked on. Like they were looking supposedly at Kerkez as a left back, but now they're going to need a starting right back. They supposedly want to sell Darwin and maybe Diaz and get in some more attackers. They've been thin at centre back for ages, and if one of those guys goes down, they're in serious trouble. Like I said, Konate out of contract next year. This is all assuming that Salah and Van Dijk re-up their contracts in a way that doesn't, put a huge hole in the finances for the next half decade. Schlotterbeck would at least theoretically cover left centre back and left back, though I would not want to play him left back in the Premier League that much.
Yeah, I would. He's not fast enough at left back.
But we've heard rumours about him and Yorel Hato, right? And it does feel like they're both in this category of like tweeners.
Let me reverse that. I think that depending on their structure, you could get away with it. It kind of depends on who they got at right back, so that you could figure out like what this guy's job was. Because we've seen guys like Ben White be able to excel as a center back that then moved out wide. If you've got close enough to the same skills, like Calafiori is a little bit of the same element as well, more attacking weirdly, but less healthy. So I like this rumor. I think Schlotterbeck's really interesting. I think Liverpool fans are going to take this completely in their stride. They're going to be totally relaxed about this rebuild. There'll be no stress around it. In faith and in God, they have trusted to, Michael Edwards and Richard Hughes and FSG. Like, FSG's done such a masterful job, according to every Liverpool fan that I know. So yeah, I think they'll just be totally relaxed about this. This makes perfect sense for everybody. Like, huge rebuild coming off of a Premier League winning season. Yeah, it's natural.
Yeah, I agree. We never, as we know, FSG always spend exactly the right amount of money in the eyes of Liverpool fans. Look, Schlotterbeck, his passing numbers this season are absolutely bananas, and he's a big unit. He's 25. He's 6'3".
Everything makes sense about this deal.
Yeah,
and it makes sense for multiple teams, but I think like Liverpool will obviously be the front runners if they want to sign it. I like the fact that it gives them flexibility too. Like if they want to go big, like say in knockout competitions, and they want to do like the big back line, that's a huge deal as well. So it gives them more opportunity to be able to do that. The thing that has really powered their title winning season though is those center backs have been masterful, and physically masterful. Like I've seen them in person a couple times this season, and I could not believe how clean they were every single time. It's not that they haven't had some bumps, like every game hasn't been perfect, but compared to almost everybody else, like the only two in recent times that I can remember being this way were Saliba and Gabby. And that actually is, that was a key to Arsenal finish second. The attack was less good around that. Like this has been Liverpool dominating. And so this is a huge risk in that, like you're having to opt into new things, not necessarily through your choice. But one of the recurring themes that we have at the transfer flow is you don't get to stand still, because even if you just try and keep everything the same, the world changes and it changes out from under you, and time is a thing, and injury accumulation is a thing. So yeah, I think Liverpool might be the most interesting team in a rebuild this summer, because they are coming off of a Premier League title. They are losing definitely one of those three. They might be losing three of those three, depending on what happens here, although I don't think they necessarily want to.
And questions around Alisson.
Right. And I think that they will just be careful about that budget, because they don't want to turn into Manchester United. And that's the most important thing for Liverpool fans to remember. You don't want to be that fucking team over there that's down in like 13th, 14th, 15th and has like so little talent on the books. You guys are excellent right now. You have to have faith that this good team that has built you a couple of times before can do it one more time, or for as long as needs to be done.
And a guy who can play left back, left centre back might also get you more mileage out of Van Dijk. Having Van Dijk as that kind of situational central centre back in a back three, like that.
Yeah, if you want to go back three,
exactly.
If you want to go back three against certain groups, like I think that's useful for you too. If you even need to change head coaches down the line, not saying that they do or would even think about it, but if you did, like again, having the flexibility to go back three, because back three is a little in vogue, and it does seem to be something that's going to be, a consistent trait, not just like it was in Italy for a while, but you'll get Italian managers, you'll get the Portuguese managers, occasionally you'll get some Dutch managers bringing it across. You've got a 5 with Glasner as well, so a 3 and a 5 there as well too. So yeah, I think it's useful.
The other thing is with Schlotterbeck, historically, quite a good goal threat. And I would like to see some set pieces with Van Dijk and Schlotterbeck and Konate.
Nobody else does. Nobody else wants to see that.
I think that'd be exciting. Okay, shall we move on from our transfers then? Those are the transfers that we covered today, but we will be bringing these to you pretty regularly over the coming weeks. If there are any rumours you see that you want us to cover, drop them in the comments below. We really do appreciate it. And should we get on to Chelsea Spurs? This is a huge matchup, man. 4th versus 14th. Wow, what a game. But despite the fact these teams are separated by 10 places, it's only 15 points between them and only 4 goal difference, which is kind of funny. Spurs actually have a negative XG difference, though, currently, or at least in the numbers I'm looking at.
They didn't, though, and that's the really important thing to remember. So the Spurs have been injured all year, the whole time, and this is the first time that they're going to be pretty much healthy coming back into games. Now, when they were healthy, they were the second best team in expected goals in the league. For a while. Now, some of that was like soft and squishy, but they were hella fun to watch. They were like possibly the most fun neutral team to watch in the first quarter of the season. And then the wheels came off as the hamstrings flew off, and then they've suffered since then. So Chelsea have been suffering. This is a really big game for them. They seem to have gone back to Sanchez, so they're going to be very pressable probably, and Spurs like to press. Yeah, I'm stoked about this. I'm not saying that Spurs are the right bet. I haven't put together my bets for this week. This is a Thursday night game. But if you're interested in that, variance betting has done great. We cracked 7,000 in profits for the season. But yeah, I don't know. I think that it's the first time that Spurs fans could potentially be a little bit optimistic about their result in 4 months. It's a little while.
Yeah, though Madueke, Palmer, Jackson should all be back for Chelsea too. I don't know. To me, this is like a real stoppable force meets movable object, right? Because I'm like, because Chelsea's attack gets the ball into the final third really easily, but then they're not as good at moving it into the actual danger areas. I think they're 3rd for passes into the final third. They're like 8th for passes into the penalty area behind Brentford. Spurs' press, it's obviously been high all season. It's now like 2nd, 3rd, coming down from, first by miles, by PPDA, I mean. But they've held teams to the 2nd lowest pass completion in the league all season long. But then they're 11th for allowing passes into their penalty area. So it's like they're going to press you in the early stages. But if you can get through that, then they are in serious trouble. So to me, this is a game where I'm like, Spurs can create some stuff, but can Spurs keep out some stuff? I don't know.
I was excited to do the rug pull there, and you just did it, which is basically like Chelsea are also healthy for the first time in a while, and the fact that Madueke and Jackson are gonna be there is a huge difference because those guys move in a different way, in a much more dangerous way than any of the other Chelsea attackers. So if Palmer is on song and can get the ball to those guys pretty quickly, or Caicedo as well, like they might have a lot of success. But we haven't seen Spurs center backs sort of healthy in who knows how long. As I said, I think it's like by far the most intriguing match of the midweek. We also like the Brighton Aston Villa match. Both of those teams really care as well about this. As Patrick's been saying, Brighton with a sense of practicality about how they're defending for the first time in a long time, and Aston Villa with their imminent sense of doom level practicality and how they defend. Thank you, Unai. That's a good matchup too, and it's down at the Amex, so you get that extra element of fun there.
That's away at the Amex against this Brighton team. I am kind of intrigued to see this as like to see what this might suggest about the PSG game to come, because that Unai's gonna want to like shell the fuck out of this game. If it doesn't work against Brighton, I have no idea what he'll do. Like what he'll think.
Same thing. It'll be exactly the same thing. It's not going to
do it more.
We're going to double down on it. Hope that we get a set piece goal, and that's all that we're looking for. We've seen this playbook for like a decade.
Yeah, and he doesn't really have another club in the bag. I'm really excited about that game, I really want to believe in Brighton down the stretch. I want Brighton to make this top 5 race exciting. I do think the Spurs Chelsea game though is going to be blockbuster. Like Spurs have had a rough go, man. The injuries, they've lost 15 times. They've only drawn 4. It does feel that whenever
you almost sound sympathetic to Spurs fans.
I don't really have a beef with Spurs because they were crap when I was a kid. So I don't find them to be evil in the way that I think Chelsea is an objectively evil institution. Manchester United, I think, is clearly an evil club. Though them being crap also helps with this view. Whereas Spurs, it's like they're your like bumbling neighbor. You can't hate them.
And also speaking of bumbling neighbors that had a great parade this past week, Newcastle Brentford is a sneaky game. Like Brentford are a real pain in the ass to defend against, and Newcastle coming out the other side of the break and the weekend, you're like, they really need something, and this is a game that they need to get it. And this is also the classic pitfall, like from a Brentford team that's really started to get stuff out of their away matches and not just their home ones. So, I mean, it seems like it might be a boring midweek, but the reality is, like, especially Wednesday and the Thursday match have some real intrigue because we're like 10 deep in potential Champions League teams.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, there are so few dead rubbers. It's kind of interesting. Though, of course, you did highlight the Merseyside derby, which is complete dead rubber.
Nobody cares.
Nobody cares at all. Okay, so I think that's broadly it for today. I mean, I'm intrigued to see which team is worse at build up in the Spurs Chelsea game, because Spurs. I was looking at Spurs, kind of. They are middle of the league for opposition PPDA. They've been slightly easier to disrupt in build up than Leicester this season, apparently. Which I don't know. I don't know if that spells success. We'll find out.
They won't be that way again under Areola.
God, there's a topic for the summer. And also, of course, there's some other stuff that's been going on. We're going to talk a bit about the Premier League games, I imagine, when we come back on Wednesday. Marco Rosa was sacked by RB Leipzig too, so we might bring you something about that. But let us know what you'd like us to talk about on Wednesday's episode in the comments if there's something that you think that we've missed. We really do appreciate your continued support. Thank you. Do like and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. Leave us a 5-star review if you're listening on a podcast app. Please also head over to ManDown. Check out what we're doing over there, because we are trying to bring you stuff that we think can have a positive effect in your life, or at least get you to laugh at our misfortunes and mistakes. When I tell you things I say in arguments with my wife, or Ted shows you what his dating profile used to look like. We're trying to be vulnerable.
You will get to hear an irate Ukrainian woman tell me, "What the fuck?" on voice note.
I do recommend that.
And also, apparently today there might be a B and a C roll, so stay tuned.
Yeah, we got out of control today. Thank you very much for watching or listening, and we'll catch you next time. Bye bye.
So yeah, we're sort of in the B roll. We might as well talk about some ManDown stuff, because that's how we got here in the first place. So last week we dropped Radical Honesty and sort of the two truths, which is basically about, like, people are living their lives individually, but in order to put something together in any sort of relationship, but particularly romantic ones, like, you kind of have to create a shared experience. And then we dropped our first dating episode. And if you haven't seen that, this is the thing that you guys cared about, right? Like this is the thing that, we were talking about my dating, and that's how we got here in the first place. So this is the first of our dating episodes. It's more of a way to go about thinking about it. It's like the phases of dating. It's not just about sex. And one of the things I've been thinking recently is that people just are not intentional about anything, like almost anything in their like 20s and even early 30s. You're just living your life. And because you're just living your life, there's like all of the shit that would be really useful for you to know that you have no idea about. What we're finding from the comments in these episodes is that people are like, "Oh, wow, this like resonates incredibly strongly with my life, even if I'm like 20 years removed from where you are." And that's really heartening. But also, we're directing you there because I don't think the dating episode got very much publicity off of the YouTube algorithm. And so you should probably watch that one now. Now, the more important bit, and I'm saying this knowing what's coming up, we've recorded, I think, 7 or 8 episodes of this podcast. The 2 best ones so far, and I feel confident that this is true, is the next one, which is dating apps and the horrible torture that I went through in order to improve my dating app. It's literally tripled the amount of matches that I'm getting every single week, which, I mean, results are results, right? Go through the pain, get the results. And then the other one, I think, was the failure episode that I think that we just recorded last week. It'll be probably next week's episode, but that one felt like really, really strong and also super important for people to do.
Yeah, I think that those ones are kind of fun. Like, not just because you did most of the talking, Ted. I realize that's why they're your favorites. Obviously,
go fuck yourself.
But it's but yeah, I agree about the intentionality thing. Like, it is so strange how a lot of people say, I don't really feel like I'm in control of my life. And then you're like, well, how do you approach this aspect of your life? How do you approach that aspect of your life? And it's like, well, I kind of go through the motions. And I think even when we come onto exercise, when we come onto parenting, like loads of those topics, it's going to come back to that one kind of idea, which is, are you choosing how you do things in accordance with some basic belief, or some basic kind of guiding principle of what you want to get out of it? Or are
Man's
you
got to
just
have
doing some shit?
man's got to have a set of principles. That's
Exactly.
just how it works. Like, Omar taught us how to live in the streets, and man's got to have a code.
Yeah, I think it'd be good. I think I'm looking forward to that one dropping, because I always enjoy when everyone's exposed to your lore, to see how everyone reacts to it. But also, I think people will go back to that one later on, and maybe we'll start to understand a little bit better.
My law. Which law is that?
Your LORE law.
Oh, my lore. Sorry.
Yeah.
You guys speak English here.
This is the difference. Okay. This is the difference between the rhotic and non-rhotic speakers, is it? Oh, I didn't realize we were getting into this. Fucking Monday afternoon. Jesus.
When you're going to pronounce everything perfectly correctly, we got to bring it up once at a time. Lore. It's got a "r" in it, motherfucker.
This is like when my 3-year-old does an impression of my sister-in-law, who's from California, and she says, "A glass of water."
Yeah. Oh, my kids are so fucking savage when they want to be like, "Oh, this is what dad sounds like." And so we lived in my wife, that is the mother to my children, and I met in Curacao, and our first child was born in Curacao, and then we lived there while I was embedded at Miami working on American football product. And I told my kids when I first moved to the UK, it took like 6 or 8 weeks before I could speak in a way that the shopkeepers here understood me pretty easily. Now we're out in the West Country, which has its own kind of funky accent and stuff like that. But yeah, it's just like I would say things quickly in my American, like pretty clean American, actually, but American accent. And they'd just be like, and I was like, all right, fine. Let me figure out how to speak so that everybody understands me easily. And then they went to Curacao, which is so used to American English, and they had the exact same problems. And then they started to develop American accents while they were in this international school.
Oh, no.
And so they each have this delicious version that they can slip into that's so funny. But I think that they probably just think of how would dad say it, and then how stupid could I sound?
Oh, your kid's gonna end up sounding like Cary Grant. That would be amazing.
Maybe Brad Friedel. You remember Brad Friedel's like horrible?
Oh, yeah, that was really fucked up. That accent.
Madonna. There you go. When she was with Guy Ritchie, she's just the worst accent.
Yeah, that was not it.
No, my kids have beautiful accents, and they're beautiful little people. So the intentionality thing, I think, is really cool, because I was listening to this podcast with Maria Shriver and Oprah that was forwarded to me by somebody. And so, like, Maria Shriver, for those of you who have no idea who she is, she's American journalist, but also one of the Kennedys. So she was the younger generation after JFK, after RFK. Her mom was a sister in that group. RFK Jr., I think, is, anyway, it doesn't matter. And so she's part of like sort of the American political royalty. And she was talking about her life, and it was like so interesting to listen to this woman that had access to all the power in the world. Like, her dad was on the VP ticket under McGovern. It got trounced, but whatever. Like, she knew everybody, if she wanted to, was like, one step removed from her. And she was talking about like her horrible family life and how she never really understood most of what was going on. Quite a smart woman, married Arnold Schwarzenegger. So like, again, like this fascinating life and set of choices. She met him when she was 21. He was 30. Like, Arnold obviously is a world changer. Incredibly smart man. We don't think of him because, like, he played this caricature of himself in the movies in many cases, but like, dude came across and just managed to continually succeed wherever he was. And so it was like Maria's side of things, and she's written a new book, and that's why she was on Oprah. But she's been friends with Oprah for like 49 years now, and so Oprah like knew all the stuff that she went through behind the scenes. And the reason why I'm mentioning this is because you have this person that is part of the most powerful family in the world that's attached to anything that she needs to be attached to. And it wasn't until her divorce, effectively, that she ended up going to therapy. It wasn't until she went to therapy and sought out all these people with knowledge and wisdom that she learned how to be intentional about her own life and how to live it better. And if someone like that is struggling, the more you move these things forward in your life as to when you learn them, the more they compound. The fewer mistakes you make, the more choices and chances you get to have better relationships early on that then bloom into these long-term relationships of people who've known you forever, who trust you, who you trust, who you build something truly special with. And I think that's one of the things that the young men that asked us to do this, and also the young women that are starting to listen to it, are excited about, because like they're coming across these concepts that they haven't seen before. And I don't know, like that's sort of the mission, because I realize that when it exists for everybody, like it will change your world. And you'll take little bits that you want from us now, and maybe you'll go back and you listen to it again. Or maybe you'll just be like, fuck those guys, they're useless.
But that's kind of okay as well, right? Like I've had therapy clients where, like, this is when people get assigned to me in the NHS, and you know, a lot of people would come in with like a level of resentment already, because you get, you know, 6 sessions up front from the NHS. Sometimes you're seeing trainees, you know, like it's not an ideal situation, and people would come in pissed off, and sometimes people would be pissed off with me for the duration of our work together, but that would end up being kind of the therapy, because what they thought they were getting was somebody who was going to tell them how to live their lives. And they were getting, you know, at the time, whatever I was, 30 or something, you know, and they thought, well, what can you tell me? And I was like, but no one's going to tell you how to live your life. Like, nobody is going to be able to give you the answers. I could give you some tools, but if you're pissed off that I don't have the answers, then that says something about the sense you have of your own kind of autonomy. It says something about how much responsibility you're willing to take for the shape that your life has. Now, don't get me wrong, like, you know, there are material factors, you know, there are external factors all the time. But to me, I thought, okay, like, you know, it would be really helpful, not assuming that I'm going to fix this for you, but assuming that you might have the resources to fix it for yourself.
Yeah, it's a Coldplay song.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fix you. I knew I'd get that response. That's why I said it.
It's more like The Scientist, where you're like, nobody said it would be easy. Like, whatever the fucking lyrics are to that song. I haven't thought about Coldplay for a long time, so it's a bit disappointing to be reminded of them on a Monday.
I kind of like him. I think he's interesting.
I've no feelings about him, man.
Okay. Who do you have feelings about in a positive way? Because like sometimes I feel like we get down the negative path with you. You get a little, you know, you get a little riled up.
I like to be negative. It's where I feel, it's where my energy comes from. I love Tilda Swinton.
Yeah, he's even got a Tilda Swinton shirt.
I love Tilda Swinton.
We watched the first half of Doctor Strange last night. My daughter's like, she's interesting. It's like, she's very interesting.
How dare they have her in that film? Like, I mean, it's just like, talk about elevating the source material.
Mads Mikkelsen's in that film too. Come on,
yeah,
the acting core is fucking great.
But he gets genuinely nothing to do in that film. I was just like, that's a perfect thing of like, this part is absolutely nothing. Put like the hottest person on earth who's also a sick actor in it. Like, that'll fix it. It's like, that kind of does make it workable, right? It's kind of a little bit like Gwyneth. Gwyneth gets a lot of shit, but Gwyneth's a good fucking actress.
She is.
And putting her in that kind of like side role in the Iron Man movies.
But they did a good job of like filling those side roles with like really cool people. So at least in the first era. Like now, I don't know. I don't have any really opinions. Also, the star of the third show is Gwyneth Paltrow's abs. I'm 100% convinced of that one.
Yeah, she's super ripped.
And Sir Ben Kingsley, who's unbelievable.
Okay, but that's like my favorite scene in any of those Marvel movies.
It's
man.
So good.
Like, I'm sorry, but Iron Man 3 is also funny, because Iron Man 3 is such a good litmus test, I think, for, are you just a Marvel psychopath, or do you actually understand what makes a film good?
It's a great film, and it's also written by Shane Black, who's a great fucking writer and director.
Yeah, it's easily, I would say, top 2 Marvel movies, which is not particularly hard, but it's top 2. And I don't know, it just has more going on than most of those films. And the scene with Ben Kingsley, I think, is so fucking incredible, because he's such an underrated comedian, you know?
Yes.
Oh my god, I still think about some of his line reads in that. So I met somebody called Vanessa. And there's just a scene where he's like, Nessie! Like, just think, Vanessa. I can't get this line reading out of my head for whatever reason. But
yeah, I will watch a supercut of Ben Kingsley just from that movie over and over again. So good.
Yeah, Guy Pearce in it, and Rebecca Hall's in it. It's the best.
Yes, it's a fantastic film. Also, if you haven't seen The Town, please watch The Town. The Town is hang on. what side of the fence are you on about Affleck?
I'm pro Affleck.
Okay. Yeah, I'm strongly pro Affleck. How about AIDS? Are you pro AIDS or anti AIDS?
Anti broadly, but
Anti?
like I don't really have skin in the game.
Okay. I feel like some people out there are pro AIDS, but they're afraid to come forward. Oh, for those of you who don't know, this is a Flight of the Conchords skit. I just felt like I wanted to like weave it in there. Maybe we should record the football episode. I'm not sure.
No, we should just carry on with this. That's definitely the better idea.
Yeah, you have to repeat that too.
What? That Sean Paul is my Pitbull? But he is. Pitbull is bullshit knockoff of Sean Paul. Pitbull's got absolutely nothing going for him and never had a good song. Whereas Sean Paul is both a fun figure because I believe he played like water polo for Jamaica or something. Okay. And also maybe got a suspended sentence in Jamaica because he swore on stage, but he swore in Jamaican patois, which is also cool. And then he had like banger after banger after banger in the mid 2000s.
I still like Sean Paul. Okay, I just want to make that clear. Pitbull's best song is a Kesha song. Also, like 100%. That is like the best mindworm of all time. And in fact, like Kesha's a genius, and people like never give her credit for that. And if you listen to her story behind the scenes, that's really, she's had a tough time. But I have a litmus test for you.
Okay.
So you're talking about Pitbull being bullshit. What is your position on Flo Rida?
Total bullshit.
Oh, no, you're wrong. You're just
Trash
so wrong.
All the way down.
Flo Rida stuff is just like you can put it on in a workout. It's always going to kill. It's over and over.
Nah.
People will respond to this in any workout class that they're in.
Nah, man. Nah, that's hot girl shit. Like, I'm not into that. Like, if I want to put something on that just bangs in the gym, then I'll put on like Charlie XCX, which is super hot girl shit.
Hey, Charlie's fantastic. I've been a fan of Charlie since she was a teenage girl.
Me too, man. but like Flo Rida, absolutely not. Like Flo Rida to prison.
This is disappointing because I thought that we had a kinship around Sean Paul, but now I realize that you're just wrong.
Flo Rida's way ahead of Sean Paul, man. How dare you even put them in the same category?
I agree. Flo Rida's ahead of Sean Paul. He's got like 20 hits. Sean Paul's like an 8.
Okay, but hits are not the same as good songs, right?
No,
we were talking about Coldplay before.
Oh, you're being like so finicky now. Like,
that's not finicky.
Oh, yeah.
There's a difference between quality and success, Ted.
There is, but also like I'm perfectly happy to enjoy pop music. Like
so am I. I just don't like Flo Rida. It's not that I think Flo Rida's beneath me. I just don't like the music. I don't have an objection to him on some sort of like
To Miami, not enough.
I just don't like his shit. But that is an objection that you could make. But how
about Welcome to Jamrock? Release on that one?
Just doesn't work for me. No.
What?
Oh, you're so angry now.
I'm trying to be open and warm here, and he's just cutting me down over and over.
Like 10 minutes ago, you were like, "Let's get into the football," and here we are, still talking about Flo Rida. Look, why couldn't we carry on with the Tilda Swinton conversation? If you want to hear me positive, I'll tell you about Tilda Swinton. Talk about Tony Collette or something, like, all my favorite people. But
I'm sorry, Rishi. I'm sorry you have to edit all this nonsense. Okay, can you start the show, please?
Tony Collette was on a song with Kesha. Now that would get my interest.
And Kate Blanchett too, on stage dancing together. Fuck me, like I will pay $1,000 a ticket for that one.
Oh my god! Oh, the D-roll. That's a really good name for the podcast.
Yes, exactly. This is the D-roll.
Man,
what were you saying? He's recording it now. You got to repeat it. This is horrible for me.
What? Where you said that you were paying for Alina to comment on other people's dating profiles?
Yeah.
And I said you were getting fin-dommed vicariously, which you definitely are. Great. Somebody else is getting all the benefit. You're just getting finned. They're the ones getting dommed, I guess.
I don't usually have that fetish in my bag of tricks, but did you see Pedro Pascal when he was on stage, like talking about submit or something like that? And he's like, I'm into that. And like, this is like an interview around like the Golden Globes, I think. And like, no, really, I'm into that. Like, he's so lovable. And then he's been dancing recently as well. Like, who doesn't love Pedro?
He is a dreamboat, but I'm surprised the internet's still functioning after he said that. Fucking hell.
It's true.
Oh, God.
But yeah, like Findom, I think it's literally just what you call dating an Eastern European woman. So
this is the classic, community gif of like, I hope this doesn't awaken anything in me. Otherwise, we're going to have volunteers every week to have their profiles like dug out so Ted can be a pay pig.
That's it. There's nothing further to say.